We were members of the ANC before Fees Must Fall. In fact, the way we got into the SRC is because we were members of the Progressive Youth Alliance, which is sort of the youth formations of the mass democratic movement or the Congress movement, so SASCO, etc., etc. That's how we became student leaders in the first place. We were members of the ANC during Fees Must Fall. We were highly critical of an ANC-led government, fundamentally because we felt, and even now feel, that if we're going to be members of the ANC, we have every right, if not more of a right, to criticize not only the leadership, but, and I'm getting to this point, ultimately doing something about it. And then very importantly, we were members of the ANC after. So it's consistent. We've never been inconsistent on those issues. That's the first point. The second point, and we must address it, is about us becoming members of parliament. I was in the legislature in the previous term. And you mentioned it. It's not only us, right? It's not only in the ANC. It's also in the EFF. We saw it with Vuyani Pambo, with Naledi Chirwa. And I think it's a very simple answer to this, actually. The nature of a student movement is that there's cycles. We were always going to graduate. We were always going to finish off in universities and ultimately grow our activism into a new space. So we have chosen to grow our activism into a legislative space. And in fact, we are now more at the decision-making table than we were before. We are able to sit and actually be a fundamental part of passing laws and legislation, which we wouldn't have been able to do if we were continuous student leaders. And this is another point, right? So often you see people who are, we like to say it in the student movement, leading from the grave. And that is effectively when you have a young person who doesn't want to give up, who doesn't want to hand over to the next generation. So in many ways, the natural attrition of what was going to happen has. I think the bigger question, and you've asked it, what are we doing in the positions that we're in now to actually change society? In the previous term in legislature, I was the chairperson of the Economic Development Portfolio Committee as led by the ANC. And we were actually it was the first time in 8 years in which we passed a piece of legislation that was not a money bill. And that was the Township Economic Development Act, which has been critical in reboosting township economy, but also supporting small and medium owned businesses. If you look at the spaza shops, if you look at car washes, even if you look at the gogo on the side of the road who sells fruits and vegetables, there's a fund and access for her to actually grow her business to the next level. And so in many ways, Fees Must Fall had its moment in higher education, but those of us who are now moving forward are trying to create activism and change in the spaces that we're in now.